So I'm not much of a gamer, but of course I've heard about this Tracer and Overwatch thing, and I, like everybody else, think it's fucking stupid. I mean, I'm against censorship. I think there is no male gaze. There is no such thing as female objectification. It's just men looking at butts and boobs because that's what gets them off. And there's nothing wrong with human sexuality. There's nothing wrong with male sexuality. Demonizing it is, you know, so dumb. Like, it's not something we should do to each other to demonize one half of the species' sexuality, even though feminists sometimes demonize women's sexuality too. It's like men's sexuality to them is always bad and wrong and evil, no matter what. But one thing that I thought was kind of interesting about this thing that this one Phipps, is that, yeah, Phipps posted, you know, she talked about her daughter, like her daughter watching, I have a young daughter that every day when I wake up wants to watch the recall trailer again. She knows who Tracer is. As she grows up, she can grow up alongside these characters. That made me think about my childhood and characters I liked in my childhood. Female characters I liked in my childhood. And like the implication here that this one, you know, dumbass feminist is making is that if her daughter looks at, you know, sees a character that's sexy, a female character that's sexy, she's just like, I don't know, going to think that, oh, I am now a robot of the patriarchy, you know, I have no sexuality but what men, the sexuality that men think I should have, I have no sexual agency now. I don't know, whatever she thinks, like, who her daughter is going to become. And Mundane Matt talked about this a little bit and said, well, it's probably a bad thing that a little kid is looking up to an assassin or thinking that an assassin is cool, but I disagree with that. I disagree with you, Mundane Matt, on that, where, you know, little kids, little girls like Disney villains, you know, like, some girls even think like the Disney villains are more interesting characters than the heroes, and they actually look up to them more or think they're more interesting. But that doesn't mean that the kids are going to become villains in real life. You know, little girls like think Ursula is a better character than Ariel. You know, some little girls have thought that. So there's nothing wrong with that. And me, as a child, like, what this made me think of, like, someone who was a huge childhood icon of mine was Xena, Warrior Princess. I fucking loved Xena, just like many women my age who were children when Xena was on TV. You know, we saw Xena as someone who was smart and tough and had an interesting backstory, had complex relationships with people, was trying to redeem herself, trying to become a better person. And, you know, she was constantly at odds with her past, which, you know, was personified in Callisto. Speaking of cool villains, I loved Callisto as a kid. I thought she was fucking awesome. So, yeah, little girls can think villains are cool, Mundane Matt, without that screwing up their head. And, so what does Xena wear in the entirety of the series? She wears what can only be described as a metal mini dress, or a mini dress with like metal on top, but like below it's just, it's like a cheerleader skirt that she has on, where, you know, you get like flash of her leg and stuff. And, you know, there are tons of shots in the show that, you know, are fan servicey to show you that Lucy Lawless is a gorgeous goddamn woman. Like, she is beautiful, a beautiful lady. And watching that as a kid, I was never like, oh, I must take off my clothes. Boys will only like me if I run around in a metal mini dress like Xena. Like, I have to take off my clothes right now because I liked Xena as a kid. Yeah. Yeah. And I don't know, I'll put this down and press my boobs up and together, and I'll be like Lacey Green. Every video she does, it's cleavage. It's cleavage, every video. Which, you know, her and her ilk are the people who are like, sexual objectification is wrong, look at my boobs. Yeah. The cognitive dissonance that exists in Lacey Green, I can only imagine what goes on in her head. But yeah, no girl, no child is looking at a character like Xena or Tracer and thinks to themselves, oh, well, she's sexy, that means I have to be sexy too to be cool. No, if a child is relating to a character, they're relating to her attributes and her attitude and her backstory and all kinds of other things that make up who she is as a fictional person. Like, that's what's interesting to children. And like, as a kid, another character I loved was Seven of Nine. Like, Seven of Nine was a huge deal to me as a little girl. And she spends the entirety of her time in Star Trek Voyager in a fucking cat suit. But that didn't mean I didn't respect her, I didn't relate to her, I didn't understand who she was as a person. You know, I wanted to be like her because I related to her. I still relate to her as an adult, as somebody who is just doesn't people well. Like, me and Seven are like that, where we just can't people all that great. And, you know, watching her reclaim an identity that was stolen by her from the Borg, you know, that's interesting. And that was a great and interesting journey for the writers to put her on. And it was satisfying to watch her become a different person at the start of the show than she was at the end of the show, or, you know, the end of the 4th season, because that's when she came on. So yeah, little girls are not bothered by sex, by sexy female characters. Like, for most little girls, that doesn't really even register for them, I don't think. It's only until later that they start to want to make themselves pretty and desirable for boys because, you know, guess what? Hormones come in their body and their bodies are telling them it's time for you to maybe start making babies. But that's biology, that's science, you know, it's not society or culture that made that a thing. You know, all you can do is educate children, boys and girls, how to handle those feelings responsibly and try to make them a little bit smart about their choices. Of course, it doesn't always work, but you can say you tried at least. I can tell you, if a 13-year-old girl out there is wearing a shirt that's a little too low, a skirt that's a little too high, it's not because she's a fan of Tracer. Okay? Like, that's not a thing. Alright. Sayonara, auf Wiedersehen.